Welcome to Every New Day, and this is ENDtv. A region that birthed Western philosophy, law, language, and global trade sits at a crossroads. What if the countries surrounding the Mediterranean, from Portugal and Italy to Morocco and Egypt, joined in a real political and economic partnership, a Mediterranean Union? Could it reverse regional decline and reshape geopolitics? Or would historic, economic, and political fault lines make that dream impossible? Well, we're about to talk about that. The Mediterranean has always been the cradle of civilizations. Many of the institutions and ideas of Western civilization originated on the Mediterranean shores. Greece gave philosophical inquiry, democracy, experiments, drama, and scientific rationalism. Rome turned those ideas into legal codes, civil, administration, and political institutions that shaped Europe for centuries. Spain and Portugal launched the age of exploration, building global trade networks that remade economies and borders. These historical layers made the Mediterranean a cradle of world history and left a deep cultural linkage between Southern Europe and North Africa. Today, many countries on the southern rim are economically fragile compared with Northern Europe and the Anglo-American world. The label PIIGS, referring to Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain, became infamous after the Euro area crises, highlighting deep structural problems: slow productivity growth, high public debt in places, aging populations, and uneven investment. Today, some have rebounded. Spain and Greece, for instance, are seeing solid growth driven by tourism and services. But structural problems remain: aging populations, brain drain, and uneven investment. On the southern shore, North Africa presents its own mosaic. Morocco has invested in manufacturing and tourism. Tunisia remains small but diverse. Algeria is still heavily dependent on oil and gas. Libya's economy has been shattered, obviously, by recent conflict. And Egypt, with its vast population, is both a regional heavyweight and a state weighed down by economic struggles. The gap in GDP and development between Southern Europe and the Maghreb, which is North Africa, is stark. But so too are the complementarities: energy, trade, food, and demographic potential. The idea of Mediterranean cooperation is new. In 1995, the Barcelona process tried to build bridges. In 2008, the Union for the Mediterranean was launched, bringing together 43 states from Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. But this body has remained a forum for projects, not a true political or economic union. Muammar Gaddafi once spoke of a far bolder vision: a Mediterranean confederation linking North Africa and Southern Europe. He rejected France's narrower proposal for a Mediterranean bloc, calling it a passing fad. His vision, however, collided with both Arab and European politics, and with his own eventual downfall. Still, Gaddafi's idea highlighted a simple truth: the Mediterranean is too interconnected to be forever divided. But who holds the power today? Who sets the rules? Northern Europe and the Anglo-American world dominate global finance, NATO and EU decision-making. Germany, France, the UK, and the US often set the rules, while Southern Europe bears heavy costs and the burden. During the Euro crisis, austerity measures hit Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain hard, sparking resentment and political backlash. Critics say the EU functions as a two-speed system. Wealthy northern exporters thrive, while southern states struggle under debts and constraints. This imbalance has left many wondering if another model is possible, one rooted in the Mediterranean itself. Of course, culture and religion could complicate the picture. Southern Europe is historically Catholic and Christian. North Africa and much of the Eastern Mediterranean are Muslim majority. Migration across the sea has often been used to stoke fear and polarization. But research shows Southern Europe has not seen the same levels of radicalization found elsewhere. Integration outcomes vary by country, and cooperation is possible. Still, political actors who exploit religious identity remain a challenge for any project of unity. Could the Maghreb anchor a Mediterranean union? Well, Morocco offers a degree of stability and diversified growth. Tunisia faces political hurdles but has strong human capital. Algeria holds massive energy reserves but suffers from dependency, whilst Libya remains fractured by the previous conflict. Egypt, meanwhile, is both a challenge and an opportunity. Its location at the Suez Canal makes it indispensable for global trade. Yet its economy is under enormous strain, even as it attracts massive foreign investments along its Mediterranean coast. So yes, there is potential, but political stability, infrastructure, and governance are prerequisites. And then there's Turkey, the elephant in the room. Over the last decade, Turkey has built one of the world's most ambitious defense industries: drones, tanks, naval ships, and even fighter programs. This gives Ankara more independence from the US and Europe. It remains a NATO member, however, but practices what many call strategic ambiguity, cooperating with the West when it suits, but also buying weapons from Russia, making deals in the Middle East, and flirting with BRICS, the new emerging economic powerhouse competing with the IMF. Turkey's Blue Homeland Doctrine lays claim to vast maritime zones in the Eastern Mediterranean and Aegean. This challenges Greece, Cyprus, and EU law, but it shows just how far Turkey's ambitions reach. In the Balkans, Turkey has quietly expanded its influence. It has trained Albanian troops, supplied defense systems, and cultivated cultural and economic ties in Bosnia, Kosovo, and Albania. For some in the Balkans, Turkey is a more reliable partner than distant Brussels or Washington. Yet within NATO, tensions run high. From its purchase of Russia's S-400 missiles to delays over Sweden's NATO accession, Turkey frequently tests the alliance. Analysts now suggest NATO may need a more transactional relationship with Ankara, accepting its independence rather than expecting blind alignment. All this raises big questions. Could Turkey anchor a southern Mediterranean partnership, balancing Europe, North Africa, and the Balkans? Or would its ambitions clash with Greece, Cyprus, and others? Either way, no Mediterranean Union can exist without Turkey, whether as a bridge or as a wildcard, especially considering Turkey is now an emerging power to be contended with. So is a Mediterranean Union possible? History shows cooperation is possible but fragile. Incremental cooperation is realistic. Trade corridors, cross-Mediterranean infrastructure, joint investment in energy, water, and climate resilience, student exchanges, port upgrades, and solar farms are already part of the Union for the Mediterranean projects, also known as the UFM. The EU itself has struggled to create one-size-fits-all economic policy for its own members. Witness austerity conflicts and the PIIGS debates. So exporting an EU-style union across the Mediterranean faces an uphill political climb. But a true political and economic union faces perhaps some major barriers: deep economic gaps, unresolved conflicts, identity divides, and the gravitational pull of NATO and the EU itself. So possibility, yes, but limited without major political change. A pragmatic path is incremental. Expand trade corridors, invest in cross-Mediterranean infrastructure, harmonize regulatory frameworks, trade, energy, migration, and fund joint projects in water, solar energy, and ports. That could yield shared prosperity and reduce asymmetric dependency. But a full political Mediterranean Union, a supranational body like the EU, faces deep obstacles: economic asymmetries, contested identities, security concerns, and competing external powers. The Mediterranean once shaped the world, from philosophy and law to empire and exploration. Could it do so again? Could Southern Europe and North Africa, with Turkey and the Balkans, forge a new path away from Anglo-American and Northern European dominance? The answer for now remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the Mediterranean is once again at the heart of most of the global geopolitics. My thoughts would be that we should not underestimate the potential for such an economic union, more so than a political union, as we have seen how political unions don't function so well, especially considering when you're trying to bring together different cultures. And I think what brings together cultures more so are trade, information, business, arts, etc. When you try to conglomerate everybody under one political union, as we've seen with the current status of the EU, there's a lot of imbalance and there's a lot of inequity. The future is more so one where we can respect the different cultures to function independently, but together they can secure a union for forging more travel, business, and trade. So those are my thoughts, and I feel currently under the umbrella of the impact of the US, considering also the Trump tariffs right now, as well as the EU and how it's been so lopsided in how the euro was originally implemented, causing the PIIGS, the southern nations, to suffer more. There is an advantage here that is being overlooked. And hopefully, if the southern nations of Europe manage to come together, a Mediterranean Union is possible and can flourish. We've seen it happen before, obviously under different guises, and it can happen again. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe, let us know what your thoughts are in the comments. But for now, this was ENDtv.